For 7 days, I forced myself to learn the basics of 2D animation, and this is how it went. So I picked up the Animation Basics course on ProjectCity.tv by ModernDayJames. Project City is basically this website where you can join these classes and attend these weekly online lectures that are taught by industry professionals in art, animation, storytelling, and a bunch of other stuff. Funny thing is, I actually picked up this course like months ago, and I didn't attend any of the weekly lectures.
You what?
But during that time, I was kind of busy with school, and I don't have school anymore. I'm out, so like Mr. Incredible, I got time. Luckily, all the lectures were recorded, so I can use that time to go back and finish the 8 weeks of assignments that I missed out on. How fun. So that's enough context. What did I actually animate? Or what did I do? What have I been up to these past few days? Well, the week 1 assignments consist of 4 levels. I did the first 2 levels. Level 1 consists of animating a bouncing ball, a pendulum, and rotating some forms in space. And the second level involved animating a bouncing ball in perspective. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna run through each of these real quick. We're gonna look at how I animated all of these assignments, and hopefully you can get some tips on how it can help you as a self-taught animator or artist or whatever you happen to be. All right, that's enough talking. Lego. Okay, the first thing I animated were some balls.
I beg your pardon?
All right, my bad. Let me rephrase that. I animated some bouncing balls.
I beg your pardon?
I did the bouncing ball animation. There's nothing weird about it, I promise. Anyways, let's open up TVPaint right now. Then we're gonna go to File. We're gonna go to Recent Projects, Saved. We're gonna open up the bouncing ball animation here. The thing you have to realize about animation software is that they use layers. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go layer by layer and see how I animated these balls.
Stop saying that!
Okay, so what you see here on this layer is me just mapping out the path that the ball is gonna take. I also marked off the different positions the ball is gonna be in per frame. You also may want to peep out the spacing here. So the farther away the marks are, the greater the distance the ball has to travel, right? The ball is traveling a farther distance in a certain amount of time. That means it's going faster.
Fastest, boy!
So at this point right here at the beginning, you'll see that there's a greater distance between this mark and this mark. That's when the ball has the most amount of energy. It's gonna be moving faster. It hasn't started bouncing just yet. It's kind of been tossed up in the air. So while planning the animation out, I took this into consideration. All right, that's the planning. Now we move on to the rough animation. So this is what the pros call a rough animation. It's basically me just penciling in like the ball in different positions. I'm just being loose at this point and not really worried about making it perfect or anything. It's the rough stage. It's gonna be rough. I also animated this straight ahead. Straight ahead basically means that I'm animating this without, planning out my frames beforehand. I'm just going from one frame to the next, drawing in a new iteration of the ball. What I'm also doing here is I'm adjusting the shape of the ball. See, as it's going up, it's a bit more ovular. Then once it reaches the top, it becomes a bit more circular as it starts to slow down. And as it starts to descend, it becomes a bit more oval shaped. And once we hit the ground and make contact, it squashes like that. All right, that's the roughs. Let's move on to the next layer here. So this is basically called the inks. This is just me going over the rough animation, drawing over it with the pen tool. I'm just taking my pen brush and I'm just going over those pencil lines that I made in the rough animation. It doesn't really require much brain power at all. You just take whatever animation you have and you literally just draw over it with the pen tool. Next up is something called a color layer, or more specifically a color texture layer, CTG layer for short. Now this is a pretty cool feature in TVPaint. It's super useful for quickly coloring in whatever animation you have. All you gotta do is just go to new, color and texture layer, then you just fill in each and every frame with your color here. It's much better than doing it the old-fashioned way where you actually have to color it in by yourself. You have to add the strokes manually. With this, you can just tap in at like one stroke and then it fills it up entirely. It does some like super algorithm computer stuff to look for the surrounding lines and stay within that certain area. Long story short, it's a very useful tool for coloring. All right, now ladies and gentlemen, we have the pendulum animation. So here again, I'm just planning out the path that the animation is going to take, the pendulum in this case. Once again, taking out those marks here. At the very beginning of the swing, I'm just easing into it, starting off pretty slow, and then as it descends, these marks get further and further apart. In order to make it look like the ball is moving fast. Okay, here is my rough animation. So once again, just using my pencil tool over here to draw in like some rough drawings here. And unlike the previous animation, I animated this pose to pose. Now, that's just fancy talk for I drew one drawing here, and then I added another layer, and I drew the ending position right here. And then I just filled in the blanks. So I literally put in these layers right here, like in the middle. Now you know what pose to pose is. Once you go to like a party or something and you want to impress some girls, and you can just tell them what pose to pose is in animation, and you basically got them at that point.
Weird, buddy. You're weird.
And you may have noticed that I only animated one swing here. I only animated the part where it's moving towards the right and not towards the left. And there is a reason for that. I'm gonna talk to you about it later though. Don't want to spoil the surprise. Also forgot to mention that I animated this thing on 2s, which means I'm holding the same drawing for 2 frames rather than just 1. That's 12 drawings per second rather than 24 drawings per second, which means a lesser chance of me getting carpal tunnel. Work smarter, not harder. At this point, the animation here, however, is on 1s. So as you can see here on the timeline, we only have 1 drawing here. It's not held for 2 frames like the rest of these here. I learned from Modern Day James's lecture that having the ball at its lowest point be on 1s looks like it's going faster, you know, since that drawing is only held for 1 frame rather than 2. So it stays on the screen a less amount of time. And if you're being very observant, you may have noticed I have 2 lines for the connection thingy, line, rod, whatever. I have 2 lines instead of 1, whereas on the rough animation only had 1 line. So initially I was trying to draw 2 straight lines, but there's actually an easier way. What TVPaint allows you to do is to actually select a certain portion of your animation, and then you can transform it by choosing this transform tool over here. You can change the panning tool to the transform tool, and you can move it around anywhere. And you can also change the perspective if you want to. So all I did was for each of the drawings, I selected that little rod there, and I transformed and did some perspective magic to maintain the shape as the pendulum is swinging. All right, so let's go back to that previous question. Why did I only animate 1 swing during the rough animation? Well, if you're smart like me, then you probably know that we're animating the same thing, but it's just backwards. But instead of drawing the same thing over again, but in reverse like a dingleberry, I executed a 200 IQ move. What I did was I highlighted all the frames involved in the first swing, copied them, pasted them, and then reversed the order of the frames. Once I did that, boom, I have 1 full oscillation.
Huh?
I'm sorry, big physics words. We have 1 swing forward and 1 swing backward. So after the animation was complete, I went back in and added some style. So when the pendulum was at its lowest point, I actually erased the circle I had here and replaced it with some smear frames. I did it for this drawing and I did it for this drawing right here. Not only does this add a bit more style to the animation, but it really emphasizes the speed of the pendulum. All right, so here we have 2 new animations that's rotating forms. First one I did was a cube, so let's talk about that one first. All right, so first layer, I just set up a horizon line to track my perspective lines. Then I had this little chart here, which is gonna help me track the position of the cube as it's rotating. That's the basic setup for this cube rotation here. And I didn't include any inks for this. It's only roughs. I basically animate this cube at 0 degrees, 22.5 degrees, 45 degrees, 60.75. Wait. 60.75, 67.5, then 90 degrees. And lastly, I added a CTG layer just to color in one side, just to drive home the point that this thing was actually rotating, because if we actually turn this color off, we hit play here, this animation's looking mad dusty.
You need to be trying to get an education, because your looks ain't gonna get you paid, because you're not that cute, and your hair is uneven. You look dusty.
So I add this color layer here, and I colored it on one side basically just to show that the cube is actually rotating. It was kind of hard to tell without this thing, without the side colored in. But I realized that upon finishing this animation, I like literally screwed up some frames. So like this part here, we're on this angle, then we go to the next frame. Then we're here, we skipped the middle mark for some reason. I don't know I don't know what I was smoking when I was animating this, but you live and learn. It is what it is.
It is what it is. It is what it is.
Okay, so next up we have the rotating cylinder exercise, which actually turned out a lot better than the cube, to be frank. This animation I animated on 3s, which means I'm holding the drawing for 3 frames rather than just 1s and 2s like I did with the previous animations. So we have the same drawing here on 3 frames, 1, 2, 3. Look at me, I can count. And next up, I'm simply drawing the cylinder at different angles. This drawing is at 45 degrees, then we got 90, and we got 135. We have 180, 225, 270, 315, and then we get to 360. Alright, so the last animation I did this week was bouncing a ball through space. No, I'm not talking about like some Final Frontier, Star Wars, Treasure Planet space. I'm talking about the space around you and me, just like the air. So the planning phase was a tad more complex than the previous animations, but it still wasn't that hard, really. So the first thing I did was I added a horizon line, which is that horizontal line, and I added this vanishing point and some perspective lines. Then, of course, I animated the path that the ball was going to follow, just so the animation process would, be a little easier for me. TVPaint has some pretty useful tools for creating perspective stuff like this. You can go right here to open and close guidelines in order to add all those guides. For the roughs, I animated on a combination of 1s and 2s. So we kind of established earlier that at the beginning of the animation, the ball has the most amount of energy. It's gonna be moving faster. So I decided to animate the starting portion of the animation on 1s just to emphasize that speed. You can see how rapidly the ball is moving at the beginning part of the animation. And you can see how I'm squashing the ball right here as it makes contact with the floor. It's really important that you change the volume of the ball as it bounces just to make it look a bit more believable. Then as I started animating more and more of this ball here, I brought out more of the 2s, because at this point in the animation, the ball is starting to lose energy. It's starting to slow down. I also started to add more drawings of the ball that were much closer together, because remember, the closer the drawings are, the slower the animation appears to be. So at this point here, for example, I'm adding a lot more drawings here just to really emphasize the ball slowing down. Then I'm just having the ball like stop bouncing and then it just rolls off into the distance until it can't be seen anymore. That's something I want to point out too. If you do this exercise, you want to make sure that your ball is decreasing in size so it actually looks like it's moving away from the camera. And I also include some speed lines here and there, for style. The next layer is the ink layer. Once again, I'm just simply going over my roughs and I am just drawing over those drawings with my pen tool. So we get a clean looking final animation, and that's all there is to it, really. And lastly, I added a CTG layer and just filled in each of my drawings for the inking layer with just a red color, something basic. And I just made like a little brush stroke, and TVPaint just did the rest, filled in that drawing for me. That way I can just easily move through these frames like super fast, do like one stroke, and then all the colors are done for me. All right, that's cool and all. I drew some cute little pictures here and there and made them move. We gotta get to the important stuff. What secret, ancient, mystical Mr. Miyagi wisdom did I pick up forcing myself to do animation for a week? I didn't know anything about TVPaint when I first started. Matter of fact, I didn't know how to draw a single frame or, use the timeline like at all. Rather than watching a slew of tutorial videos about how to use each and every single tool in TVPaint, I just decided to go ahead and start animating and then learn the tools of TVPaint through necessity along the way. By doing this, I was able to avoid watching countless videos, wasting more and more time, learning about some tools that I may or may not have needed just to finish my work. I only watched the videos I needed to watch, and I only researched what I needed to research. I needed to know how to make a new frame on the timeline, I looked it up. If I needed to know how to change my keyboard shortcuts, I looked it up. If I wanted to know how to get my favorite female Twitch streamer to notice me in chat, despite me donating my life savings to her, I looked it up.
That's crazy, but let me be clear. I don't remember asking.
So if you take anything away from this video, at least take this. Learn things through necessity and by just doing. Alright, the video is over. See you later.